We've got you covered all season long. Welcome to the BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Buffalo Wild Wings.
All right, here it is. Welcome to a brand new episode of the BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Buffalo Wild Wings. Let's go, sports bar. My name is Brandon Carnes, and we've got a very special edition of the podcast coming for you today. We have spent all of 2024 celebrating 20 years of BCSN and talking about some of the best moments, athletes, and coaches of what we're calling the BCSN era. In today's episode, we'll wrap that all up in a bow, featuring Justin 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and some of the voices and faces that have helped make BCSN what it is over the last 2 decades. First up, Justin welcomes Todd Hostetler, Greg Franke, and Tom Cole in to talk about the early years of BCSN.
The different types of sports that he alluded to, yes, baseball, basketball, football, right, softball, those types of meat and potatoes that a majority of players and student athletes participate in. But we did handball, squash, pickleball, and the list goes on. And I know that you kind of a utility person in the sense that you didn't say, I'm only doing football. You will do pretty much anything and everything for BCSN.
Yeah, and I'm going to date myself again. I watched a lot of Wide World of Sports growing up. The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and I remember I used to joke about it. I'd be at home watching TV and watching all those different things, and my parents would come down and say, why don't you go outside and do something constructive? And I was thinking, I couldn't have said at the time, well, hey, someday I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be part of a TV channel, and they're going to need somebody who knows about rock climbing and whatever else I'm watching.
Yeah.
And so I am doing something constructive. I'm building my future portfolio. Now, I couldn't say that, but that's what it turned out to be. And just harking back for a moment to the origins of BCSN too, I think that Alan Block had a real vision of what he wanted to do. And there was a lot of internal skepticism, and rightly so. I remember when I read about it for the first time, I thought, are they really going to do that? Are they really going to make all these productions and all these different sports? And there was a sense of, this is just not doable. It's a great idea, a noble thought, but it's not going to be able to happen. And I think it's a real testament to the idea that if you have a vision and you know what you want, you know more than a lot of naysayers who are just trying to discourage you. And I think it's a classic example of that lesson.
When any industry or idea is taking off, you kind of have to take the baby steps, and it might not have been a set like this.
Right.
But do you remember kind of back in the day what the setup was like and how a broadcast was actually achieved?
Yeah, and if I can, Justin, I do a little prequel to what you were just talking about, because Mr. Block, I know, and Greg knows this, when he got the idea, right? And everybody has ideas. We all have ideas. And he went to everyone in television in this community, and I'm talking everyone, 11, 13, 24, 36, everybody. And he talked to them, he laid it out. Here's what I'd like to do, just what Greg had said. And every person that he talked to higher up said unequivocally, it will be the Titanic of television. And everybody turned it down. Everybody, no on-air broadcaster wanted any part of it. And the other part of it was there's not enough talent in this town to do it. Well, the talent was sitting here, and the talent is sitting over there that you'll meet in a little bit. We had immense talent here. But he said, you know what? Yeah, I appreciate your input, but as Greg said, I'm going ahead with it anyways. We're gonna try to make it work, and it happened. And then the other caveat is, as it became successful and as it grew, eventually all that talent that turned it down initially called and begged to get on BCSN.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it was kind of an interesting juxtaposition, But the early days, Justin, I think what happened is we were flying a one prop airplane that had a little gas in the tank. Maybe the wings were a little shaky. Maybe it had a wheel, maybe it didn't. But we got off the ground and we got elevated. But all of you have come in, the modern day BCSN people, and put 2 jet engines on the plane, and now you're flying at 38,000 feet. So we kind of got it up off the ground, but now you've taken it to a jet airplane.
Yeah, such a great analogy. You must be a teacher. Yeah. Good job, Tom. So over the course of 20 years, you said everybody has an idea.
Yeah.
Some shows work, some segments work, but not all of them stand the test of time. Anything that come to mind in regards to non-game broadcasts, whether it was the shows or segments that you guys really enjoyed?
Well, I'd say one thing, and it wasn't exactly for on air. I'm sure you're going to concur with this, but we started this thing called BCSN Back to School, where we went to visit all the different schools and the younger age kids and up through high school. And just they just gave us a stage and let us talk about, in the beginning, it was about how to get into broadcasting, but it kind of emerged into something more like, motivation and how to succeed and, work. What was your thing? You always said, work hard, play fair. It was those kind of things. And I think by the end, we were talking about all this, a number of broadcasts. I think it was countless thousands of kids we ended up talking about things that really matter. And that was because of the direction that BCSN went. It became more than just a sports channel. I love broadcasting the sports, but that was the best part of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, Greg's spot on. Nancy Duvey, who was the director, and 𝗦𝗫𝗶𝗵𝘁𝗹𝘆, the assistant director of BCSN, then Justin, that was their idea to send us out to the schools and kind of deliver that message about, do your schoolwork, try to be a good person, contribute to your community, and hey, you're going to be on BCSN someday. And the kids really wanted to be on BCSN, which was kind of an interesting thing. But Justin, if you want an incident, the one that sticks out with me, I'll give you, it's just a classic BCSN story. We were doing a game at Adrian College, which I think maybe you've done Adrian College. And they have a beautiful facility, love their campus, and they've been great to us. And we did small college games. They're wonderful. And I'm telling you, when you're up in their box, they have a metal screen they pull down. There's no window. It's a metal screen. So it's either open or it's not. I mean, there's nothing in between. So the rainstorm that came was biblical. I mean, the rain was coming in sideways through the thing. Our sideline guy who worked for the Blade, Zach 𝗦𝗫𝗀𝗀. So he's on the sideline. For the game, he had purchased a brand new white suit, right? He looked like, he looked fantastic. He's on the sideline with his brand new white. It was a white khaki kind of suit. Yeah. He got so drenched on the way out of the stadium. I look out in the parking lot. He's getting in his car, took off all of his clothes. He was in his underwear. He threw his suit away. It was gone. The suit was over. But we're in the booth doing the game, and it's classic Greg Frank. Nothing was going to deter Greg from doing the broadcast. I don't care what's happening. He is going to do that broadcast. So we have this much water in the booth because there was a tight seal, and the water just, it came up. And I still have open transcripts, but I figure electricity and water you're standing in, I'm figuring it's not a good thing, right? I'm not smart, but I knew that. And I swear, Greg, all of his notes had been thrown out.
The rain was coming in sideways. My notes just literally drifted away like they were on a river. They had to go get it for him.
Greg's the king of charts. He had everybody put down on everything. And suddenly all the charts are gone. A kid makes a tackle for Adrian. And that tackle was made by, and it was the pregnant pause, right? And Greg, and I'm wondering, what is he going to make up a name here, or what he's going to do? And I'm telling you, the chart floated by on the floor, and Jim Jones made that tackle for Adrian College, and so there were some interesting times.
Todd, I want to ask you about some of the players and student athletes that have come through our broadcast, especially back in that 2004 early time frame. Some of the names that I just remember, Brian Roberts went on to the NBA playing high school basketball at St. John's, Natasha Howard, Maddie Williams, Taylor Leach, some soccer players, Ellen Herman, a volleyball player. Anybody else that comes to your mind and you remember saying, oh, wow, that player is going to go on to bigger and better things?
Dane Sanzenbacher, wide receiver for Central Catholic. In high school, as a wide receiver, to be able to dominate a game, that was Dane Sanzenbacher. He was always fun to watch because it didn't matter what level of talent he was going up against as they got deeper and deeper. You always knew he was going to have a big game and at least one play that would just leave you with your jaw dropped. So Dane Sanzenbacher was one. Brian Roberts is one I thought of because he was one of the early ones. We had just started at BCSN when he was finishing. Nigel Hayes. William Buford, great player at Libby. When I was finishing my time here, Mark Loving, was part of some of the great runs that St. John's had. So, there's a lot of just exciting players. Someone I think is like a Triple Crown person for BCSN would be Kate Octor.
Yeah.
Because we covered her while she was playing basketball at Clay.
Yep.
We covered her games when she was playing basketball at BGSU. And then later she came back and she actually did some on-air work for us as well. So she was kind of like the Triple Crown person for BCSN.
Yeah, and she was absolutely fantastic at that, too.
Yeah, she was.
Speaking of some of these things as you're talking, memories come back to mind with Dane Sanzenbacher, and we covered a lot of those games in that tournament. And Brian Robertson, you mentioned here. These are guys that were obviously great, and they were obviously going to have a future. But to think that they would actually go on and become stars in the NFL or a 12-year-plus career in the NBA, you probably didn't, if you're honest, you probably didn't see that then. But I remember the story of Central Catholic and Dane Sanzenbacher. So they had a quarterback, Kevin Jansen, who did a great job with them.
Yeah.
But Dane was actually a quarterback. And he came, the story we got, was that he came to Coach Dempsey before the season, and basically, and they were good friends too. And he basically said, and I've actually talked to guys and gotten the actual firsthand story on this, but basically Dane said, I think that the team would be better off if I went out to play receiver and Kevin played quarterback, because, you know, he felt that he was a very versatile player that way. And the interesting thing, and talk about, again, what I just love the life lessons out of BCSN. I mean, here's a guy that stepped back. Would he have made it to that level as a quarterback? Tom would be a better judge than me, but I don't think so. By making that change, he opened the door for a tremendous future. And I remember, like, the third round, they played like the team that was supposed to demolish everybody. And he made like 3 or 4 electrifying runs and touchdowns. And I think at that moment, I thought, first of all, Central's got a good chance of going all the way. But it opened my eyes from thinking this guy's just a really conventional, excellent high school athlete to a guy who might really be what he ended up becoming.
You know, Justin, I go in a little different area for you, if it's okay. And Greg and I were privileged to do the Bowling Green football and basketball. And Greg did his normal, typical, phenomenal job. But there was one game in particular. It was Bowling Green had a good team. They were a good team. And playing Kent State, who didn't really have a great team. They were a sub-500 team.
Where you're going.
Yeah. So they had a quarterback, Kent State did, short guy, diminutive. I mean, he couldn't have been 5'7", maybe, I don't know, 5'8", tops. And he threw that day, for 350, and he ran for 280, just a shade under 3. So almost a 3-3 day, you know. And during the broadcast, Greg and I are watching this guy, and I said, you know, I mean, I don't, you know, say, I'm not saying NFL, but I'm saying they're crazy. This guy can play in Canada. I mean, he's got special gifts and special talents. Oh man, our guys in our truck were ripping me. You know, you idiot. You know, what's wrong with you? You know, I mean, which most times they're right. Most times they're right. But it ended up,
they meant it.
Yeah, I was sincere. But this time, I mean, it ended up being Julian Edelman from the Patriots. So we were privileged to see a lot of those kinds of things.
All right, Game Day Nation has given a special platform to Friday nights here on BCSN, whether we're talking football or basketball, giving you live looks into the action around the area, and of course, recapping it all with Game Day Nation Overtime. Justin sat down with the guys who give our insight and knowledge to the program, Mike Robinson, Mike Jewell, and Deon Thompson.
The host, the analyst, the talent of Game Day Nation, whether you're talking football or basketball, Mike Robinson, Mike Jewell, and Deon Thompson. Guys, what we talk about at BCSN is we always want to have energy, enthusiasm, and fun, and Game Day Nation epitomizes all of that. So for you guys, I'm curious, when the idea of BCSN came and the idea of Game Day Nation came, what it was going to be all about. What were you guys told and what to expect?
Well, for me, I had just got done with coaching ball, and I was a student assistant at University of Toledo. And Tad Folks sent me a message like, hey, you want to get on a TV show? And I'm like, sure, why not? You know, and he was like, well, let's start next Friday. So I was like, okay. And so it just kind of came out of nowhere. But the knowledge and stuff that I've gained from coaching high school football for 7 years, it made sense. So Game Day Nation was just such a fun show to get involved with. And I was just honored to be a part of it.
What about you, Jewell?
The rock for me was always doing the games, you know, for the first 10 years doing the games, and then working with Joe Ridnowski and inside the red zone. a lot of fun. And that was sort of a pre-week thing. So you'd sort of settle into it. Then it shifted back into the games. And then, you get this not much different from Mike at all. This sort of NFL game day was what they always sort of mentioned. That's what we're going to do. And then I didn't ask a lot of questions. I just sort of let fear envelop me. But it worked. It clicked, and Mike's a huge part of that. The people we've had running it, working it with us, we just watch and have a ton of fun. Yeah,
and Dion, always dapper, by the way. Well done. One of,
there you go.
If not the best dressed man on BCSN, one of. But with your background playing in the high school area here in Toledo, and then coming up through the ranks in college, and then having a son play on BCSN. I mean, you were well versed. You kind of knew what it was all about, and describe to our viewers kind of what you expected and what you try to bring to the broadcast.
So I initially we were on another station, and I got to thank Tom Cole. I think Tom recommended me, and we had worked together a lot. And I said, well, let's see what it does, basically, because you're right. My son was young at the time. I was covering a lot of the games, but I thought it was going to be a great experience, get a chance to really do some things differently in front of the camera, and here we all are.
And Jewel, I like how you guys kind of bring in the professorial type of approach and kind of like the life lessons that Greg Franke was alluding to earlier in our first segment there, and the fact that so much good can come from not only high school sports, but youth sports. And you particularly like to bring that message forward. You guys always bring up your historical teaching background and all that kind of stuff with history lessons and the like. But what are you trying to convey, and what is your kind of philosophy as an analyst for us?
The big thing is you celebrate, the concept of what BCN is trying to do, to be a part of that, and seeing that, from a coaching standpoint and then into the role, but just the celebration of the moment. Nothing is better than sports at that moment, that celebration, and then you sort of analyze it as a person. Everyone should, and figure out where you're going and how you're trying to do it. And again, somebody just likes me, because I get into these situations and I just have fun. And Mike Robb means it when he says it. I mean when I say it. The epiphany of dealing with a guy like this, who's a mixture of youthfulness and vigor, keeps me going, and an old soul personality where we can start to talk about way beyond the X's and O's, because that's the stuff that kids need to hear, and they need to hear it from various sources, different sources, beyond their parents, beyond their peers, beyond their regular coaches. So we just try to bring that in. But oh my gosh, just watching those plays and watching those TV screens, it's fun. Off air, just as fun as the on air stuff.
Dion, have you seen any memorable games or a particular play or a particular coach or student athlete that you've seen in person, seen on the screen, where they are a generational type of talent?
Well, yeah, I've seen a lot. I mean, we could be here for a long time talking about that. I always talk about the 2013 class. I have a little bias to it. Coach Mike was on that. He coached my son over at Central when they won state championship, but I just got to name these guys. I mean, you go through basketball, you got Nigel Hayes that came out of Whitmer, Mark Donnell came out of Anthony Wayne, Mark Loving, St. John's, football, Brogan, Jamie. I could go down the line, but my goal as an analyst, and this is what's important, I always wanted to be able to make it make sense to people who don't like sports. Okay. So I try to make it, when I'm talking to this little person, because I've heard that before. I say, hey, you make it real understandable, but you got to have personality too. And I think that's what I love about our station. They allow each of our individual personalities to come through. We're on here 3.5 hours live. Yeah. So we can't be fake. You're going to see who we really are.
Dion made a great point about making it personable and making it, easy for them to understand and to follow. So we can talk the smart football talk, basketball talk, technicals if we need to, but the best part is just being able to make it conversational. And so when you get down to those big games, grandma's watching, little brothers watching, cousins watching, we want to celebrate them, like Mike said, in that moment. So watching big games on TV like that and not knowing what's going to happen. I mean, we're up out our seats the whole entire time, walking around the studio, just like if we're coaching or we're part of that game, because it just means that much, and we're really appreciative of opportunities. We
kind of follow athletes from when they're playing youth sports into the high school ranks. A lot of our high schoolers go on to play at local colleges, whether that's BG or UT, in some cases Ohio State or Michigan, but also Lords, Siena Heights, Adrian. And what is that experience for you guys to see and talk about them when they were 14, 15, 16, 17, and then 18, 19, 20, 21?
I was going to say, it's going on now. Like, you know, the maturation process when you watch these guys, like you watch Joey Holyfield, and I'm like, I remember he was a freshman at Stritch. He's killing it at Lords now, you know. So when you watch those guys come up, you see their body change, you see them, and they still remember you. So it's like they kind of grew up as your kids, so to speak. And you really, I love that. That's what's beautiful about our station, covering these Northwest Ohio kids, because they go on to do great things.
Jewel?
Both Mike, Rob, and I dealt with one of those situations in our translations is we're dealing with kids. And one kid sort of stood out towards the end of my coaching career, the start of Mike Rob's, and that's Bryce Mitchell at Bowser. So, you know, I watched Bryce, a young kid, then I was out of it, and Mike sort of took over and rolled with him. And Mike, to watch Bryce and then watch Bryce and you develop that relationship, not just at Bowser, but at UT, that was fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. Like you said, just, you know, from being a young coach, I started coaching at 22, 23. And then now most of these guys are 30. And so now it's, you know, watching them go through college, play through college, and then now they're coaching. You know, one particular, Jalen Santoro, you know, the head coach over there at Perkins, you know, he went to Bellevue, you know, watched him, covered him, and then now he's a head coach. It just makes me feel a lot older than what I am. But more importantly, it's just appreciative that they have all this on film and all this knowledge that they can go back and show their kids and show their players that, you know, BCSN has great coverage across the board.
And you know what else I'm appreciative of? That you didn't mention our coaching records, because that's probably why we're all here.
That's why we're here.
We're all former coaches, so thank you for giving us an opportunity. We're not wrong up here. See, we can talk.
Second chance.
So based on that, we're glad you guys failed as coaches, but you are succeeding as BCSN analysts. We're going to keep you guys all employed. We appreciate you guys taking the time to join us here on our 20th anniversary special.
All right, for our final segment of the 20th anniversary special, Justin is bringing in more of the guys that make our game broadcasts so special. Mason Lowry, TV's Brad 𝗦𝗫𝗀, and Tom Cole come to talk about BCSN's connection to the community, some of the greats we've seen in the BCSN era, and more.
All right. Well, I want to talk to you guys about all the different aspects that we bring to BCSN viewers, not just the high school games that we primarily focus on, but you guys are connected to Mud Hens baseball in some ways. We've done Glass City Marathons, Toledo Jeep Fest. And Tom, ask you this in the sense of the community partnership. We have our tentacles, if you will, attached to a lot of different community organizations and teams. And that's something that we pride ourselves on. And you've been a key part of that.
Well, thanks, Justin. And I think it's interesting sitting next to the young guys, the young talent here, yourself included. I think the young talent helped. I mean, the old salts, Greg and myself and Duncan and some of those fellas, you know, we did okay. But I think the young professional talent kind of put a gloss on BCSN. You know, we might have been a little rough around the edges at times, but you guys came in, and gals, and put a gloss on it, which allowed us then to get deeper into the community.
Yeah, with the Mud Hens guys, because you've done public address announcing for them. Brad, you've filled in on some play-by-play broadcasts for the Mud Hens, and the Mud Hens and the Walleye, institutions here in the Toledo area, and we broadcast all of their home games.
Growing up in Northwest Ohio, I never would have conceived of getting a chance to work for the world-famous Toledo Mud Hens. This is a city that has so much great sports history in it that a lot of people maybe don't realize or always think about, but that has been, boy, such a privilege for me to be involved in it. And I'm sure for you as well. You grew up going to games and getting to call some games now with the venerable Jim Weber. That's so cool.
Yeah, my dad got to grow up going to Swain Field. Then I had the opportunity to see the Ned Skeldon days, and now getting opportunities to work at Fifth Third Field in a great setting that continues to build and make more and more opportunities for the fans. Getting to call games with Jim Weber is an experience every time. I mean, he's been doing it since 1975, and I learned something about him every time.
Yeah, Tom, another long-standing tradition, an annual tradition, is the LPGA golf tournament started by Judd Silverman. So every single year that BCSN has been in existence, that tournament has taken place in different golfing venues across the city. But the fact that BCSN puts on a 30-minute pre-tournament show and then follows each round, first, second, third, and final round, that is another gem of a sports authority that has been with us for 3+ decades.
Justin, no question about that. And I think what BCSN did there, and all of you know this, you're so professional at your work, when you can personalize the athletes, the golfers, you sit down and chat with them for a couple minutes. People want to feel like they know them. And, you do with your interviews, and you two guys have done it forever. That builds credibility. People want to come see. I had a chance to interview not that long ago Nancy Lopez. To me, she was the female Arnold Palmer. Not a negative word out of her mouth about anybody. Everything's positive. Everything's upbeat. Loves Toledo. Loves the golf tournament. When they get to know those kinds of athletes, I think it just elevates the event.
Mason and Brad, and different venues that you guys have been a part of, the coaches that you've broadcasted their teams, and the student athletes, the more modern era. You guys started 2011, 2012, so the last 10-ish years of BCSN. We've seen some names like Vincent Williams, Deshaun Kaiser, Chris Wormley, Matt Stencil, Joey Weimer, Jace Bowen, on down the list, Lizzie Wynn, a golfer, Kate Octor, Savannah Isaac, Zaya Cook, Mara Scott. The list goes on and on and on, but what have you guys taken away from some of those specially talented players and coaches?
First of all, that's an extraordinarily deep and talented list of people, and there are some that aren't on that. And one that comes to mind for me, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but the athletes that I really remember are the ones from right around when I started out, like the first really, really talented people that I saw. And maybe my favorite athlete that I've covered is Jackson Lamb from Bedford, who was just phenomenally talented at both basketball and baseball. And one of my favorite memories of something I saw in a game that I called. He was playing in a tournament baseball game up at Monroe. And he's not pitching exceptionally well. I think he had maybe struck out 10 and walked 8 or something. They're going to extra innings. And I'm working with Rick Poland, dear friend. He's been with the network probably from the beginning or close to it. And he points out to me as Jackson Lamb is warming up to pitch the 8th inning, I think it was, and says, "Is it me or is he singing along with the song that's being piped in?" And it was Wagon Wheel, Old Crow Medicine Show. Everybody knows that song. And he's out there warming up, and he's so relaxed. He's just belting out Wagon Wheel while he's getting ready to hopefully win a tournament game over a rival, which he did. He was always in the moment, always so relaxed. Loved watching him. And then, as an interesting postscript, the last time we did the Battle of the Badges at Fifth Third Field, he's now a fireman in Toledo.
That's right.
He hit 4 home runs. Still getting straight over the scoreboard. It's he can still do this.
Yeah. Brad, what about you? Some players?
Well, I guess Mason and I are both going over the Michigan line for this one because Joey Weimer, it was 5 years ago, having an opportunity to cover him in football, basketball, and baseball. And from his baseball days, he had an opportunity to, lead that team on the mound. You're talking guy as a high school kid throwing low to mid 90s. And now 5 years later, I'm going out for a run, and I love listening to baseball when I do that. And I'm listening to Joey Weimer play for the Milwaukee Brewers. And he's an outfielder for him. He's got a cannon of an arm still. And I'm going out for that run, and I hear Joey Weimer hit a home run.
Wow.
That's pretty special for us here in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan.
Some coaches, Tom, you were a coach yourself, and we've seen a ton of them. Any other coaches that stand out across all the different sports that BCSN has covered?
Well, you guys know Dempsey's done it. Coach Dempsey's done it better than anybody who's ever done it. And there have been great coaches in our community in Northwestern Ohio. He's the best. That's the end of the story. I don't care what other thing you put on it. Dempsey's it. I thought Dick Cromwell had a great run with 2 state championships. Yes. Justin Wooten, guys, what BCSN does, it's like the Wizard of Oz. We've been privileged to pull the curtain back and look into what the players and the coaches are really like. And we show it to the folks. And you know what they found, guys? These are good people. These are good kids and good people. And I think that's been, the heart of BCSN. Joe and Gil Guerrero. I did a thing with Frank Corso, who's legendary on BCSN. Frank was the best. He still is the best. We did a pregame show for Start Bowser City Championship game. I think it was at Wait. And Gil was the head coach of Start, and Joe was head coach of Bowser. Brother going against brother, city championship game. That's great theater, right? And I will tell you, interviewed both fellas, and you won't be surprised. I can tell you they competed as hard as they could. They wanted to win, but I can tell you the other one wanted the brother to win. Deep down inside, they both wanted their brother to win. And you know, so we've been privileged to look behind the curtain and see a lot of great things.
Yeah, Lamar Smith, a more recent coach, 2 state championships coaching Rogers girls basketball with Zia Cook and a number of other talented players. He's one who stands out for me, who's built a program.
Excellent
I'm a
choice.
fan of people who don't just, a 1-year flash in the pan. It's, we have the structured development and a foundation to be successful for years to come.
You talk about building a program, and Tom rightfully mentioning Greg Dempsey, who has just obviously been phenomenal. Jason Mensing. What he did up at Whiteford.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Laying the foundation for Todd Teakin to come in, take over. I don't believe Todd's lost a game since Jason went to Westland John Glenn. I think I did his first game as head coach at Whiteford against Blissfield, which was my first high school football game for the network. And you mentioned favorite venues. There is nothing around here like Whiteford's football stadium.
Yeah. The Enchanted Forest is what Mike Jewell calls it, in the woods.
That is the best possible term for it. You walk through on that dirt path, back to the field. There's nothing like it. You've got fans putting chairs in the outfield because that's all just like one big space. There's a football field and then a baseball outfield and a softball field. It's just such a cool place. And it is one of the things about BCSN I love so much. Central Catholic, Whitmer, et cetera, all a big deal.
Yeah.
But we give as much coverage as we can to a community like Whiteford that's very small and on the outskirts of our viewing area. We treat them with the utmost importance, and I so admire that about us.
Yeah, we spread the wealth.
And nothing would be more old school. I did some games there. The last thing they need to do is pull cars up and turn the headlights on. You know, I'm telling you, it's the coolest experience to do that. And another one, to your guys' point, I think Greg Frankie and I did Toledo Christian, Ottawa Hills at Toledo Christian. They were both playing for a championship. The place was sold out. You couldn't get another person in the gym, and they put us up on the stage, and that was full of seating. And then they all stood up. Every minute the tip-off, everybody stood. So we're sitting here with the monitors. You can't. Even if we stood up, we couldn't see. So Greg expertly called the game from the monitor. Even though we were there, he was calling off the monitor. But the emotion and the spirit, again, of those 2 smaller schools was like being at Hoosiers. You know, I felt like I was watching the movie Hoosiers. It was great.
Yeah, you bring up Ottawa Hills, and Brad, that reminds me of Coach John Lindsay, another person who's been a long tenured coach in the area through all 2 decades of BCSN. Have you ever met with and called any Ottawa Hills games with him? He's been a great coach.
Back in the day, for John Lindsay, I mean, he had a couple of big guys in there, and then he of course had Judd Silverman's son Ben there, who went on to play golf at Duke. But RJ Coyle was a big part of that. Jeff Beans, when they had some of their most successful times, making it to regionals down at Bowling Green State University, and that was a trio that was also early on in the Hunter Sieben days. So you add that on for just how good that Ottawa Hills boys basketball program was, and John Lindsay's been around, you know, for as long as I can remember, obviously, and you know, it's been a continued success.
20 years is a long time, and we have come a long way from just a handful of segments to a full-blown network with over 900 game broadcasts and 365 Sports Nightly episodes a year and 30 weeks of Game Day Nation coverage. We're proud to tell the stories of your schools, teams, and our community. Thank you for listening and helping us celebrate 2 decades of BCSN. And a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, First Solar, for helping us celebrate all year long, as well as Charlie's Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, Groganstown Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram, Local 886 Operative Plasterers and Cement Masons, Yark Auto, and Local 45 Heat and Frost Insulators for all their help with the BCSN 20th anniversary. And we'll be right back here next Wednesday at 4 p.m. for a brand new episode of the BCSN Nation podcast right here on BCSN or anywhere you get your audio formats. And in the meantime, hit the follow button on @BCSN Sports to miss nothing in between now and then. See ya.